Hi, Kidlet. I love you. Let's see. Where are we at today? Looks like chapter 25, Washington, D.C. Still no word from Jack? Phil Jr. took another sip of scotch. The tension was getting to him. He shouldn't have been drinking. Not only because he needed a clear head, but because alcohol had a lot of calories. One more thing he didn't need to worry about. No, Dad, he didn't check in when he was supposed to. Then why the hell don't you call him? Phil wanted to push the speakerphone with his fist. The old man would never allow himself to be talked to like this, so why should he? They were from the same cloth. He bit his tongue and went over to the treadmill, putting his single malt in the beverage holder. Phil set the medium pace and began walking. Sorry. We never called scheduled times, Dad. That was your rule, remember? So there's no connections? Use your brain, Junior. He isn't in the game anymore. One of the others has to replace him. It's a long flight from LA to DC. What's that noise? I'm on the treadmill. You told me to lose some weight. Call Jack. Fine. Phil drained his glass and took the treadmill off. He walked back to his desk and picked up the second line. As he punched in Jack's number, he held the chrome letter opener with the reflection of his chin. It wasn't fact. It was genetics. Yeah? Whoever answered didn't have Jack's voice. Dread crawled up Phil's back. Who is this? Detective Rory Lewis, Chicago Police Department. Who is this? With the mouthpiece. It's that cop, Tom's partner. God damn it! Phil could picture his face turning red, that one squiggly vein in his head bulging out. What should I tell him? Just hang up! Phil put the receiver on the hook and relaxed a tad. It amused him to hear his father frazzled. He poured himself another 2 fingers and turned the treadmill back on. Dad, you need to calm down. Call the others. Have Attila caution. There's makeup in the kit. They'll have to cover up his tattoos. He's trained on the equipment? They all did. Have you seen it? Pretty cool setup. Those darts are wicked. They're called flechettes. Yeah, the flechettes. They don't even make a sound when they're fired. They use compressed air, a CO2 cartridge. That's why I chose them. Silent, accurate, perfect weapon of assassination. The Secret Service wouldn't even know where the shot came from. The weapons were housed in fully digital cameras. Even if they were opened up, they looked perfectly normal. The flechettes were amazingly accurate, with a 2-inch radius from 100 yards. Of course, they'd be fired at a much closer range. Even if the first shot missed for some reason, they each could fire 4 without reloading. They can actually take pictures. How would you like a snapshot of the president right before he gets a poison dart in the neck? Phil brought his hands up to his face, imagining he had the camera that was the world's most powerful man. Snap. You're dead. Stay focused, Junior. Until press pass. We'll have to get a picture of him. Got one. Without the tattoos? The computer can take them off. Don't worry, Dad. It's under control. His press pass will be waiting for him at the hotel. He'll be right up front. Nice, clear shot. And make sure their watches are synchronized to the second. Once one of them goes down, the Secret Service will to protect the other one. They have to die at the same time or we won't get them both. Like a broken record, his father. Dad, anything else? Call me when they're in position. His father hung up. Phil turned the speed up all the way for a few minutes. When he lost his wind, he hopped off and finished his scotch. After his breath returned, he called Vlad. This isn't one of the scheduled times. Another type A. He tried to surround himself with yes men when he took office. I'm aware of that, Vlad. Jack is out of commission. Arthur will have to go to Washington. I want you guys to leave. Pronto. We're on our way to Bill's to take care of Tom and Joan. They can wait. This line's been busy for a while. We should check. You should clean out your ears. I said they can wait. My father there and wants it done now. Besides, Bill always takes the phone off the hook when he's writing. Doesn't want to disturb the muse or some such crap. Tell Arthur his ticket will be waiting for him at LAX. He'll be flying American Airlines. I want you both to call when you arrive. What happened to Jack? No idea. I called him and that black cop answered. Could be in jail, dead, or on his way to D.C. himself, but we're not taking chances. Does Arthur know where to go when he gets in? Yes. There was a wet sigh. I'm really itching to get my hands on Joan. She'll be waiting for you to get back. You can have all the time you want with her. Do whatever sick shit comes into your head. But right now, keep your eyes on the prize. Hit the disconnect button, then dial Bill's place. Busy. Odd that he would take the phone off when there was on, but writers were a strange breed. With Tom and Joan safely locked away in Bill's cellar, the only thing left to worry about was that black cop and the clones of Lincoln and Einstein. Phil mulled it over, but couldn't see how they could possibly be a threat. Even if they did everything, there was no way they could stop it. Still, it was always smart to hedge your bets. Phil flipped through the books and found Jerry's home number. Hello? He sounded like he'd been asleep. Jerry? Bill Sting, look. I hate to bother you this hour, but it's kind of important. The Bureau is at your service, Mr. Sting. I just had a phone call. 2 cops from Chicago. I think they're connected to the mob somehow. They wanted me to do something for them. I refused, so they threatened me. Are you okay? I'm fine, but can you imagine? Calling my home number, saying they'd kill me? I've got my Secret Service guys on it, but I'd like to know that your folks threw in as well. Making a top priority. Do you know who they are? Their names are Tom Mikowski and Roy Lewis. Go all out on this. When I'm done, even the sheriff in Wasilla, Alaska will know their names. You mentioned organized crime. Do you know what family they're connected to? But I'm sure you can find out. That's why you're director of the FBI. They may have some accomplices as well. Let me get you the names. Albert Bloomberg, Abraham Wilkins, and Joan de Villiers. We'll do this for you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks, Jerry. I knew I could count on you. So I got. You'd make some more calls. Justin at the Secret Service, and Horace at the NSA. Then he had to get a ticket for Arthur and set up the press pass, but first, jogging or scotch? He chose the scotch. During his last checkup, the doctor had cautioned him that he was in the early stages of cirrhosis. That's, the liver is dying because of alcohol damage. Didn't bother Phil in the least. Donor organs were easy to come by. He poured himself another drink and looked about his den. Even though the was among the best in D.C., he wouldn't miss it at all. His new accommodations were infinitely preferable. Chapter 26, still in Washington, D.C. When they finally settled in at the hotel, had time to sort through his lures. He and Abe had gathered as many as they could, abandoning those stuck in Jack. The numbers. What's the verdict? Bert shifted on his inflatable donut and made a face. I'm out about 200 grand. Abe frowned. You should have let me try to get the rest of them. We still can. The body probably won't be discovered for days. In fact, it'll be in your room when he's all bloaty and rotten. Bert didn't care to dwell on that image. In all honesty, I really don't care right now. When I lost my fortune, I was suicidal. Nah, just a melancholy. Abe sat on Bert's bed and began flipping through the cable guide. Near-death experience. It'll do that to you. Your partner's been acting pretty laid back himself. He stuck underwater for about 5 minutes. I thought for sure he was dead. Have you? Once, in high school. Some guys bet me that I couldn't stick my whole fist in my mouth. But gonna get it out. Cut off my air. Some jock on the football team saved me. He had to step on my forehead and yank on my... Did it change the way you looked at life? Hell yeah. I haven't gone to a football game since. I still have the cleat scars. I meant in a more meaningful way. Abe looked up from the magazine. Like, did I analyze life and decide to concentrate on things that were important, like family and friends, and stop wasting all my time sitting at home watching TV? Did you? For about a week. Now I think I watch even more TV than before. In fact, why am I talking to you when I've got that big TV in my room? Roy came in through the side door. The three suites rented were adjoining. The first four-star hotel I ever stay in, and it's the Watergate. Remind me I talked into this? Abe got up and clapped Roy on the shoulder. We don't have time to play around. A hotel like this, everything's done for you. I needed my suit cleaned, my hat blocked, the flyer copied, and a haircut. Plus, it's 3 in the morning and they have 24-hour room service. These rooms cost more than our... and we paid for yours. All in the name of patriotism. I'm ordering some prime rib. Anybody else want one? That sounds really good. There were no takers. Abe nodded a goodbye and went back to his room via Roy. Roy watched him leave. That guy is a piece of work. You think he'll be able to pull it off tomorrow? He doesn't have a choice. You. We got the easy part. How's your ass? The bleeding finally stopped. I could use another. Way ahead of you. Roy handed him a pill bottle and turned to leave. Bert didn't want him to go just yet. He was overcome feeling that nothing should be left unsaid. Roy, Tom told me the other day about you losing your brothers. Roy stopped and waited, silent. I had a brother too. Died when I was a kid. I know what it's like. You're getting weird on me. I'm not getting weird. Well, maybe I am. What I'll say is, when I was hanging from that rope, you were there for me. Kind of like a big brother. I want to say thanks. I pointed at him. I will not hug you. Understand? How about helping with this bandage? You had gold bars coming out of your ass. Now, get some sleep. We can do this bonding shit over some beers after we save the world. Night, Night, Roy. Bert took 2 pills, then changed the dressing on his wound, being liberal with the antibiotic. It was deep and ugly and probably could use a few stitches, but that would have to wait. He brushed his teeth and then crawled into bed. The Vicodin kicked in, and he slept without dreams. Wake up! Time to save the world! Bert opened an eye and focused on Abraham Lincoln. Abe looked like he had climbed out of a history book. His unruly hair had been professionally clipped, his beard was neatly trimmed, and he wore an antique black suit with creases all the right places. How do I look? Say something presidential. Abe cleared his throat and put his hands in his lapels. 4 years ago, I scored 7 times. I hope you have better material than that. Actually, I'm going to recite the Gettysburg Address. I memorized it back in school for an assignment. Tell me you got an A? D+. A few of the words slipped my mind, but I think I've got it down pat now. Why did Lincoln have 4 fathers? Bert couldn't tell if he was kidding or not. Rather than dwell on it, he rolled over and looked at the clock. By the way, 4 fathers, the fathers who come before us versus 4 as a number. Going on 1 o'clock. He sat up in the bed, a move that made him wince. Why'd you let me sleep so late? We almost let it go. The only way to get into the gallery while Senate was in session is with a pass. Roy spent all morning trying to get some. He finally had to call to Chicago for help. But he got them? I hope so. This haircut was $30. Bert pulled himself to his feet. The bandage was stuck to him, and he had to take it off in the shower. Hurt like crazy, but no sign of infection. He slapped another one on and got dressed, jeans and a golf shirt. room service sent up some aspirin. The Vicodin could wait until later. When he was ready, he knocked on Roy's door. "Do you have the gallery passes?" Roy was also in jeans, and the sleeves were rolled up in a button-down shirt. Damn things were harder to get than Janet Jackson tickets. Luckily, my Luke knows some important cops in this town, or we'd be spending the whole day getting the runaround from the Senate offices. I thought she suspended you. I'm on vacation, remember? I go to the nation's capital, like anyone else. They pulled Abe away from the TV, and the three of them took a cab to the Capitol building. It was a cold, gray day. Bert hadn't been in D.C., sorry, for almost 10 years, but he couldn't conjure up much enthusiasm for the several monuments they passed. He was nervous. There was a potential for disaster that they hadn't discussed. What if, despite their diversion, the VP got assassinated anyways? The Secret Service could mistakenly connect them with the crime. While Bert was all for saving millions of lives, he didn't want to spend the rest of his life on death row. The driver let them out on the east side of the building. It had begun drizzling, and in the rain, the dome of the Capitol looked dirty and oppressive. They walked up the entrance ramp slowly, hemmed in by a big crowd waiting in line. Apparently, the average American's taste for tourism wasn't limited to theme parks, though Bert would probably make an argument that Washington, D.C. was the biggest amusement mecca of them all. Did we remember the matches? Got 'em. Relax. Roy patted his pants pocket. Everyone make sure their watches are synchronized. Chime this morning against CNN. Coming on 2:38 right now. Abe set his watch. When? At 4:12. We don't know how long you'll have before they try to remove you. Are you okay with this? No, rested. No problem. When it gets out that I'm a national hero, think about the factor. Bert didn't bother telling him that it might never get out. Okay, are we clear on everything? I don't want any talking once we go in. Nothing to draw attention to ourselves. Draw attention? Bert snorted. Jumping guys walking with Abraham Lincoln. Don't worry about it. Everyone will be looking at Abe. We'll be invisible once the show starts. Right, Abe? Huh? I wasn't listening. Roy gave him a tap on the back of the head. The future depends on what we do in the next 90 minutes. Gotcha. I'm all about helping the world. I freed your people, remember? The line moved at a steady pace, and after a tense moment walking through the metal detectors, they were inside the Capitol building. It was bigger than Bert remembered. All columns and arches and big works of art. There were three more lanes. Two had turnstiles and dividers, separating those who wanted to take a guided tour and those who preferred the self-option. All had to wait for tickets, which were free. The third line was for the gift shop. Abe said, "What tour without an I Love America t-shirt and the Strom Thurmond snow globe?" I don't know what that means. I ushered them over to the side, next to the law library doors. We're supposed to meet some senator's aide at 3. He's going to take us. Bert nodded with some satisfaction that Abe was drawing even more attention inside than he had outside. Maybe he did pull this off after all. Mr. Lewis and party? The kid was barely out of high school. Pimple face, red hair. He wore a tan blazer and brown slacks, and the knot in his tie was uneven. That's us. You're Senator Biltmore's aide? Kevin Dermott. Nice to meet you all. Does everyone have their pass? Go ahead and clip them to your shirts. Have you seen the rest of your party? The rest of our party? I'm businessmen visiting from Japan? I think they're over there. Roy pointed to a group of well-tailored Japanese men standing near the entrance of the rotunda and chatting among themselves. Oh, of course. Please follow me. They took Kevin to the group, where he failed to impress everyone with his halting Japanese greeting. We are grateful for this opportunity, the businessman answered in flawless English. Extend our thank you to the senator. Does everyone have a pass? Leave them at the Senate appointment desk, thank you. The kid led them through the lines and to the first of many guarded doors. Bert noted that the Capitol Police were abundant. All had uniforms, and all were armed. Maybe they wouldn't even make it to jail. Maybe they'd be shot and killed before given the chance. They walked through a hall decorated with large paintings of fat guys with white wigs. The air was dry, and it smelled like a museum. The Japanese seemed more interested in Abe than in the surroundings. They were too polite to point, but their stares were obvious. The first stop is the old Supreme Court chamber. Kevin bypassed another guard and ushered them into the room, where several dozen others milled about. The impressive umbrella vault ceiling was designed by Benjamin Latrobe. He prattled on about some bust and the original desk and chairs, and before they could get a good look around, they were on to the next stop. I picked up a tore pamphlet from the kiosk and looked through it. This was not good. Apparently, there were only 2 more rooms to do before the gallery. At this pace, they would finish the tour before 4 o'clock. Too early to save the VP. Went up the grand staircase and made their next stop the National Statutory Hall. This is actually the old House of Representatives chambers. It was converted in 1964 and then later restored to its original appearance in the 1970s. Feel free to take a commentary for sure. The room was semicircular, filled with marble columns and dozens of white, black, and gray statues of various dead guys. Kevin led them on a brisk walkthrough, pointing out the car of clock, the fireplace with the Declaration of Independence above the mantel, and the Liberty and the Eagle relief above the entrance. Then he headed on his way out. Kevin, can we take pictures? Kevin turned to Bert and frowned. You don't have a camera. But several others in the tour do with them. Bert turned to the group. Would you gentlemen like to take some pictures? There were several enthusiastic nods. Kevin put on a fake smile and said, Of course, take your time. Enjoy the many pieces of art. He bought them 10 more minutes. That still wasn't enough. Bert's watch read 3:45. They had to somehow kill a half hour in the next room. The old Senate chamber. The Senate met here from 1810 to 1859. Then it became the Supreme Court chamber in 1935. There, you can see the historic Franklin stoves. Now, on to the gallery, where the Senate is currently. Bert and Roy exchanged a glance of extreme panic. It was much too early. They had to stall the tour. What were some of the historic things that happened in this room? Bert's voice came out more urgent than he would have liked. Quite a few. Did you have any particular in mind? Kevin's smile was in place, but it was obvious he had no desire to answer questions. He was probably still bristling from having 10 extra minutes in the statutory hall. Bert racked his brain. High school history class was 14 years ago, and he could remember any of it. But he was Einstein, damn it. He was one of the greatest minds to ever grace mankind. It should still be in there someplace. He closed his eyes, willing himself back to that class. In his head, his old history textbook appeared. It was diffuse, out of focus. He focused and it came closer. The details came slowly. The brown paper shopping bag he had cut up to use as a book. His name written inside, right under a person named Sam Gold. He saw the table of contents, surprised that he was able to read it. As if it were right in front of him, Bert opened the book to the 1800s. Didn't the Webster-Hayne debate take place in this room? Bert asked, meeting Kevin's stare. I don't recall. Perhaps you can enlighten us. I believe it started as a plan to curtail Western land sales in 18. Senator Robert Hayne from South Carolina believed that an agricultural system built on slavery could only with an unlimited supply of cheap Western lands, and argued that the states should have the right to set aside certain federal laws if they wished. Bert glanced at Roy, who nodded, urging him on. Senator Daniel Webster of Massachusetts equated the debate to one of the states' rights versus national power. He argued for 2 days that the nation wasn't an association of separate states, but a government by the people. As such, it was responsible to the people and fight only if the people, not the special interest of the government, chose it to be. Several of the Japanese business gathered around Bert to listen. Thank you for that information. Now, moving along. This is also the room where the famous Missouri Compromise was reached, correct? Yes, that's correct. Now, if Bert addressed the tour group, Missouri had petitioned to enter the Union as a slave state, which would have tipped the balance of power because free and slave states were equally represented. So did they allow it? Roy asked.
The compromise was that Missouri was admitted as a slave state only if Maine was admitted as a free state. And then slavery was barred from the rest of the land comprising the Louisiana Purchase. This kept the nation together for 40 more years until the slave states tried to secede over the issue, bringing about the Civil War, almost as well known as the Compromise of 1815. Bert went on to talk about the debate among Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, and John C. Calhoun. It culminated in a Mississippi senator actually pulling a gun on a Missouri senator. This led to another Clay story about the censuring of President Andrew Jackson in 1834, and Bert followed that up with the famous tale of the attack on Senator Charles Sumner by South Carolina Representative Preston S. Brooks. Brooks had taken exception to an address Sumner had given and beaten the senator with his walking cane in this very room. The more Bert talked, the better his delivery became. He began to move around the floor, using his hands to gesture and point. While he couldn't quite understand where the information was coming from, he didn't stop to question the phenomenon. He just went with it. When Bert checked his watch again, it was just after 4 o'clock. I could go on, but I'm sure you're all anxious to see the new Senate chamber, where many other acts of deceit and violence has occurred. Kevin gave Bert a weak smile and led them out of the room. How the hell did you remember all of that? Roy took him aside, whispering. I have no idea. It was like I was reading it in my head. You'll have to teach me that trick. I have trouble remembering my own phone number. They took the stairs to the 3rd floor. There was another guard at the entrance, this one standing behind a desk. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We ask that you please leave all pagers, portable phones, and cameras here. The Senate is currently in session, so there is to be no talking. You're welcome to walk anywhere around the upper level. That is still how it is today, by the way. He opened the door. Bert looked at Abe. His forehead was glossy with sweat, even though the building was cool. Then he turned to Roy, and the cop appeared positively sickly. Here we go, Abe said to himself. He took a deep breath and held it. They went in. Chapter 27, Montreal, Canada. Tom tried his best to sleep on the flight, but exhausted as he was, his mind wouldn't allow it. There was too much to think about. Even if they did pull it off, if they could save both the president and the vice president, it wouldn't be over. Stang would simply try again. The man had too much money and power. Out of morbid curiosity, Tom had accessed the FBI most wanted list on his laptop and wasn't surprised to find himself on it. The others were there as well. Unless they all desired to spend the rest of their lives hiding, surfacing only to stop assassination attempts, they had to end this. Tom knew of 2 ways: killing Stang and Son, or gathering evidence. Since he was a cop and not a hitman, the choice was made for him. They would pay the former senator another visit and try to find all of Harold's notes on the cloning experiments. Maybe then they'd have enough to convince the authorities. Of course, that also meant going public, and Tom wasn't sure he could handle that. He was still having some trouble dealing with the fact that he was Thomas Jefferson. Once the world found out, the media attention would be never ending. He would no longer be an average guy with an average job. He would be outed to celebrity status and become public domain. Tom Minkowski would no longer exist. While that might work for Joan, who already had a career in the spotlight, it wasn't at all what Tom wanted out of his life. Of course, all of that assuming that they would actually live through this. He turned to Joan. She was sleeping, her head against the window. Remarkable woman, he thought. Strong, pretty, successful, smart, funny. Under different circumstances, she never would have given him the time of day. But fate, if you could call it that, threw them together, and Tom sensed that she felt the same pull of attraction that he did. Tom didn't put too much stock in that. Crisis situations tended to heighten emotion. Joan was a woman who really did have everything. What could Tom possibly offer her? Kids and a little house in the suburbs? That's what she went to LA to get away from. As if the situation was complicated enough to add some hormones to the mix. Tom closed his eyes, thinking over their plan. It lacked the elegant simplicity of Abe's idea. There were too many things that could go wrong, cause them to fail. Hopefully, they had prepared for them, but real life tended to pay scant attention to plans, no matter how well thought out. Disastrous scenarios coursed through his head, failing to save the president, getting arrested, getting killed. He tried to block them out, but couldn't. If they failed, there could easily be a nuclear war in the immediate future. Something touched Tom's shoulder. He opened his eyes. Joan had switched positions, her head now resting on his arm. She snored softly. He lifted up the armrest between them and put her arm around him. She nuzzled against him, and all the bad thoughts were wiped from his head. He was asleep a few minutes later. They arrived at Mirabel, Montreal Airport at a little after 11 in the morning, Eastern Time. Tom had seen so many terminals in the last few days that they were all beginning to blur together. This one had the distinction of being bilingual. All of the signs and all of the announcements were in French as well as English. You know, for Canada being owned by Britain, it's still unique that they have the French as part of their official language. I think because the French trappers were there beforehand. I don't know. Not my country. I don't really know the history. Joan looked good. Certainly not like someone who had just spent 8 hours on a plane. Somehow she had managed to climb over his seat and freshen up without waking him. Her hair and makeup were pristine, and her blouse was wrinkle-free. In contrast, all Tom had done to start the day was splash some cold water on his face and brush his teeth with his finger. Joan handed the customs agent her passport, and Tom pulled out his driver's license. "And how long do you plan to stay in Canada?" "A week," Joan answered. "Business or pleasure?" "Pleasure." "Do you have anything to declare?" Joan nudged Tom with her elbow. "The gentleman does." Tom raised an eyebrow. "What do I want to declare?" Her smile was full wattage. "Independence?" Tom resisted the urge to groan. "How long have you been waiting to say that?" All polite. "That was the high point of my entire week." "Better than that movie deal you just landed?" Sometimes it's the little things. He thought about her snuggling next to him on the plane. Can't argue with that. They located the rental car place and got wheels, and then took a room at the Montreal Ramada, using the name Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. If Tom had any illusions about sharing a room with her, they were thwarted when Joan suggested they get a double. "We can each have a bed." Even though she looked bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, Joan insisted on a shower. Tom went through the phone book and located 6 local fire departments. He jotted down their numbers. Then he found a nearby copy shop and noted the address. Sorry, my oxygen driving me crazy. There were still 3 hours before the shindigs was to begin, but already the police were out in force. On a drive-by, Tom counted at least a dozen uniforms and plainclothes cops swarming around the entrance. Also standing vigil were several Secret Service agents, complete with Ray-Bans and earpieces. A block away, 3 Mounties on horseback waited on the corner. As Tom was expected, they'd never be able to get very far into the building, let alone the room where the president was speaking. After Tom took a quick shower, they stopped at a nearby restaurant and located the payphone by the restrooms. Tom made sure it worked and then copied down the number. Yes, back in the day, the payphones themselves had phone numbers, so you could go both ways. They stopped that towards the end. It was only outgoing, not incoming. Their next stop was a department store where they got a digital camera. From there, it was on to the copy place Tom had found in the phone book. Like its American counterpart, it offered a variety of services. Tom rented some computer time and got to work. An hour later, they had business cards with the restaurant payphone number printed on them. Using the camera, they also made and laminated some picture IDs complete with the Canadian logo Enbridge. Tom punched holes in them and attached some alligator clips. He also bought a clipboard and spent a few minutes hunting through the various waste baskets in the store, stuffing it with official-looking papers. Back at the hotel, Joan showed him how to work the meter. It was a technical-looking piece of equipment the size of a portable radio, complete with dials, switches, lights, and a red needle. It's from the movie Galaxy Invaders. The heroes used it to detect the heat given off by an alien. It detects heat. It doesn't detect anything. It's phony. See this button? Press it and the needle jumps and the red light blinks. This button here makes it beep. The rest is just decoration. Tom hefted the prop by the handle, waving it to and fro, pressing the buttons on the sly to make the needle jump. While he practiced, Joan unpacked her suitcase. Hope this fits. I guessed you were 42 long? Joan tossed over a bright orange jumpsuit. Tom inspected it. Not only was his name embroidered on the vest below the Enbridge logo, the logo was also on the back. This is perfect. Got you this, too. She tossed Tom a white hard hat, also with the logo. They shrugged their jumpers on over clothing, as they were meant to be worn. Tom noticed that they even had some grease marks on them, appearing as if they'd been in use for a while. Nice touch. You ready? Tom noted that even with the hard hat on, Joan looked cute. Ready? Are you sure you want to be the point man? I took some acting classes in school. I'm a cop. I'm used to dealing with uncooperative people. Joan furrowed her eyebrows. I just wish we had a backup plan in case this one tanks. Tom felt the same way. But they didn't have a choice. We can do this. She nodded. Tom checked his watch. It was 3:48, less than half an hour to save the president's life. They got on their way. Hey, kidlets. Here we go. Keep going. Chapter 28. Both Washington, D.C. and Montreal. Bert went to the railing and looked down upon the Senate chamber 1 floor below him. From this vantage point, he could see everything. The room was big and round, brightly lit. Rows of mahogany desks were arranged in a semicircular pattern, and Bert was surprised to see half of them empty. Sorry. Occupying the remainder were senators, running the gamut of race, age, and sex. Their dress was as varied as they were, 3-piece suits to business casual. They drank coffee and bottled water and had little side conversation with each other and their aides, while a voice thundered over the loudspeakers in a monotone that sounded quite bored. Elsewhere, activity. Interns and messengers coming and going, a group in a box off to the side that included some reporters and photographers, most of whom looked supremely disinterested. Several video cameras were in operation, recording everything for C-SPAN. Not what Bert had been expecting. Perhaps he had harbored images of important men in robes making grand speeches that held the audience in rapt attention. This was more like a college seminar, except less formal. Bert turned his attention to the central dais. Sitting above the Senate was the vice president. holding what looked like a white rock in his hand. Bert figured it was the gavel. There were several people on the tier below him, and Bert could see someone standing diligently in the rear that was undoubtedly Secret Service. Bert looked around the gallery where he stood. It was a large hallway that wrapped around the chamber, kind of like a long circular balcony. Several dozen onlookers milled about, many staring down at the proceedings, but just as many whispering to each other or walking around. Bert counted 4 Capitol policemen among them and assumed there were more he didn't see. Everything was relaxed, casual. Roy caught his eye and gestured for him to come over. He was standing next to a large bust of a familiar face. Thomas Jefferson. Almost time. Bert checked his watch. 11 minutes after 4. They had less than 3 minutes. Bert searched for Abe in the crowd, but couldn't find him. ... 15 minutes earlier, in Montreal, Tom had dropped Joan off at the restaurant and was attempting to drive through the large group of people that had gathered around the hotel storefront, waiting for the president to make his exit, Tom guessed. They were being kept off the sidewalk and away from the entrance by velvet ropes. Tom honked, cutting a swath through the crowd, eventually edging the car up to the hotel. He was instantly surrounded by cops and the Secret Service. What the heck is going on? Tom made a show of looking around. Sir, you have to move your vehicle. Tom pointed to the ID clipped on his chest. I've remembered natural gas. Just got a call. There's a leak in the building. An agent, eyes impenetrable behind his sunglasses, consulted a clipboard. Then he spoke quietly into his lapel mic. What's going on here? Tom made a show of looking around him. Some kind of party? The U.S. president is speaking. Hey, buddy, I don't care who's speaking. I need to get some readings. You'll have to wait in the car until you're cleared to enter the building. I don't need to enter the building. I need to check the foundation first. The Secret Service guy was impassive. Look, if you don't let me check for a gas leak, you're endangering this entire block. Once the saturation reaches 5%, it's flammable. Anyone in there lights a cigarette, plugs in a toaster, rubs their socks on the carpet. Boom! The agent made his decision and allowed Tom out of the car. Tom grabbed his prop meter and followed him to the front of the building. When he got there, 2 men frisked him. What the hell? They searched his pockets and came out with one of the phony business cards. Tom watched as one of the agents called the phone number on his cell while another examined his gas detector. Careful, that's sensitive equipment. The agent on the phone asked several questions. Tom had to assume Joan was following the script, answering as Enbridge natural gas. Sorry, I cannot read today. And confirming both the leak and Tom. When he hung up, he gave Tom a small nod. Go ahead, take your readings. Tom frowned at them, looking annoyed, and then took off his hard hat and ran his fingers through his hair. While doing so, he palmed the 3 small vials that were taped inside the hat band. Then he took the meter back and began to point it around the sidewalk. He eventually moved up to the front doors of the hotel and hit the button on the handle, making the needle jump. Uh-oh, it's a leak, all right. Can you open the door? We still don't have internal confirmation, one agent said to the other. Tom snapped a vial in his fingers, softly breaking it and releasing the liquid. A rotten egg smell drifted up from his hands. Can't you smell that? The smell was mercaptan. It was the primary ingredient in smoke bombs, a novelty shop classic. It was also the chemical used by gas companies to add scent to otherwise odorless natural gas. Ha! I said it at the time. Harmless, but nauseating. Tom glanced at the agents and could tell they did notice the smell. One even fanned the air with his hand. You better let me take a reading inside. They had a brief talk amongst themselves and then allowed him in, accompanied by 2 escorts. The lobby was full, more cops and Secret Service, and several hotel employees. Tom broke another vial and hit the switch on the sensor to make it beep. The levels are high. You better get these people out of here. Which people? The whole damn building. The whole damn block. Do you see these levels? Tom pointed at his meter needle, which he held in the red. You've got to clear this place out. Shut off the main. I don't even want to be standing here. The guy turned away, speaking into his microphone. Tom looked at his watch. It was already 4:11. They were badly behind schedule. Where was Joan? ... At that moment, hundreds of miles away in Washington, D.C., Bert frantically searched the crowd for Abe. He finally spotted his stovepipe hat on the other side of the gallery. Bert wiped his palms on his jeans and swallowed hard. The moment of truth had come. "Friends, citizens, senators," Abe's voice bellowed, matching the volume of the droning senator who was on the House sound system. "I came here today because it is the historic anniversary of the Gettysburg Address." The gallery focused on Abe. Bert stared down into the chambers and noted that many of them, too, were staring up. Some were chuckling. The senator who had the floor had stopped speaking. Bert had no idea if it really was the anniversary or not. He guessed not. But, like everyone else, he was momentarily spellbound by Abe, his words, his presence. Abe didn't hesitate. He launched right into it. "67 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, no matter how they were, created." Bert stared at two of the Capitol Police who had begun to move on Abe. He turned his attention to the Senate floor and saw the Vice President appeared, amused. "There, in the box," Roy nudged him. "That guy with the camera. I think that's Attila." "Now we are engaged in a great civil war, conceived and enduring, consecrating great brave men who greatly and bravely braved great things with bravery." Bert watched the man whose camera was aimed at the VP while every other eye in the place was on Abe. Warning bells went off in Bert's head. That little poison dart they found on Jack. "We need to do this now." Roy reached into his jacket pocket and removed an unwrapped pack of Black Cat fireworks, a string of 50. The police grabbed Abe, and he threw his hands up into the air dramatically, tossing out dozens of sale flyers for Honest Abe's used car emporium. They cascaded down and into the Senate chambers. "We are met on the great battlefield of that war," Abe continued, even as a third policeman jumped on him. "This is America. I have a right to free speech. You cannot silence me. I won the war, damn it. I freed the slaves. Probably did a whole bunch of other important stuff." Bert screened Roy from view as he lit the match. He kept his eye on Attila and held his breath. The firecrackers began to go off. While still in the air, they fell onto chambers, with the report of machine gun fire, causing instant panic on the floor. Senators ducked under desks, covered their heads, screamed out loud. The Secret Service man dove onto the VP, pulling him to the floor. Bert turned to look at Attila. He was making his way through the crowd, heading for the exit. But had he gotten a shot off? Roy tried to pull Bert to the ground to imitate what everyone else was doing, but Bert had to see, had to know if they had completed their mission. Finally, after almost a minute of waiting, a swarm of agents and police had surrounded the VP and were taking him out of chambers. The vice president appeared shaken up, but alive. Bert let out a breath, unaware he had been holding it. "We did it. We saved him." He turned to look for Abe. The cops were pulling him roughly out of the gallery, the cuffs already on. As he passed Bert, he grinned and gave them a wink. "I assure you, gentlemen, I had nothing to do with that outburst. I just wanted to sell some cars." They hauled him off. The room became a hubbub of commotion, everyone talking at once, everyone unsure as to what had just happened. Bert checked his watch. 17 minutes after 4. They had done the job. But how about Joan and Tom? ... At 4:12 in Montreal, Tom had almost succumbed to panic. The authorities weren't evacuating the building, and there was no sign of Joan. Then, like an angel sent from heaven, Joan stepped into the hotel lobby, more Secret Service agents surrounding her. She had an official-looking clipboard at her side and Tom's cell phone in her hand. "Oh, my God, can you smell that? What are the levels, Tom?" 3%. Tom broke the last vial, almost gagging at the stench. We gotta clear these people out of here now. Joan dialed a number on the phone and pretended to talk into their home base. Sirens could be heard in the distance, getting closer. Before showing up, Joan had called all 6 of the local fire departments and told them about the gas leaks. In a few minutes, it would be pandemonium. Tom checked his watch. It would be close. Where were these lunkheads going to get the president out of there, or what? Finally, 6 agents went rushing off down the hallway, bravely rushing to save their leader, Tom hoped. There's a gas leak, Tom shouted to everyone in the lobby. Nobody panic. They panicked. Tom flowed out of the lobby with the rest of the people just as several fire engines arrived. He met up with Joan and they melded into the crowd and watched. The Secret Service allowed the firemen in and shortly began to assist in evacuating the building. When Tom saw people coming out wearing tuxedos, he guessed the presidential dinner had been evacuated as well. Looks like we did it. Tom nodded. They probably ushered the president out a side door. He checked his watch and noted it was 4:17. If the assassination had happened, the Secret Service would be corralling people for questioning rather than letting them leave. The relief he felt was like a drug, purging everything bad from his body. Joan made a face. For just saving the world, that was kind of anticlimactic. You think so? I was fighting the whole time not to throw up. Let's get out of here. Find how the others did in D.C. Tom made his way through the crowd, having to push and shove because it was so densely packed. When he got to the car, he took off his hat and turned around to talk to Joan. She was gone. Chapter 29. Montreal. The guy to Joan's left uttered a small gasp and then dropped dead on the asphalt. Before she could even react to what was happening, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her away. Poison dart. Move or you're next. The man had a beard and mustache, and he was wearing glasses. He had a large, odd-looking nose, too big for his face, but the eyes, those deep green eyes, were instantly recognizable. Vlad. He was pressing a camera up against her. Joan guessed it was just the housing for his weapon. That's how he had planned to kill the president. I said move or you'll die where you stand. She looked for Tom, but he had vanished into the crowd. Then she turned to Vlad. His face was red, his lips pursed. He was seriously angry, and Joan had no illusions that he would kill her if she didn't move. But would it be better to die here, quick and easy, or go with the psycho someplace private where he could take his time? Her feet began to move of their own volition, and he led her away. Joan could guess the horrors in store for her, but she didn't want to die, even if she'd regret it later. They made their way to the other end of the street, Vlad with his arm locked around hers, the camera pressed to her side. He cut through an alley, taking her away from the commotion, the people. Tom. Every muscle in Joan's body was coiled. She kept waiting for something, anything, that would give her an opportunity to get away. The further they walked, the less likely it was that she would get one. How do you think Stang will react when he hears you failed? Vlad's rage was instantaneous. In one motion, he released Joan's arm and backhanded her across the face. She hadn't been prepared for such a sudden blow and found herself falling backwards, landing on the tarmac. Her hard hat had flown off, bouncing behind a dumpster. Bright motes swam in her vision. She brought a hand up to her face. It came away red. Nosebleed. Hurts, doesn't it? He reached up and pulled at his own nose, removing the fake latex one, exposing the swollen, discolored one underneath. Put this on to hide the bruise. The rubber nose bounced off her chest. Joan blinked back tears of pain and tried to quell the ringing in her head. The camera was at his side, no longer pointed at her. Now was the time to escape. She didn't have the chance. Quick and savage, Vlad kicked her in the right side. Joan managed to shift so he mostly hit her arm, but the blow sent her rolling. She had taken kicks before, by shoeless opponents of equal size. None hurt like this. Her entire arm began to go numb, and the motes she saw became blurry. Vlad came in again, grinning lasciviously. Joan tried to bat away his hand as he reached for her, but he managed a good grip on her hair. He yanked, forcing her head back. "I'm not going to beat you to death in the alley. It won't be that easy. I have a place nearby, someplace private. All my tools are there. We're going to have hours of fun." Joan flailed out her leg, kicking at the camera. He kept it out of reach. "What's going on?" A young man was standing at the mouth of the alley. Young, short hair, muscular build. He took a step towards them. "Don't!" Joan started to say. Too late. Vlad pointed the camera, and a second later the guy was doubling over, blood foaming from his mouth. Now there's a Kodak moment. Joan ground her teeth together and made her decision. If she was going to die, she was going to die trying to get away, not cowering in a corner. She scrambled to her feet and ran for the mouth of the alley. At any moment she expected to feel a dart penetrate her skin. It looked painful, but quick, better than being dragged back to his place. But the dart didn't come. Instead, something hit her on the back of the head. Joan lost all motor function. Her world began to spin, and she fell onto all fours. Vlad kicked again, his foot burying itself in her stomach and sending her rolling into the brick wall. "Get up!" Joan coughed, spit some blood. She sat up. "No." Vlad began to shake, and then went from 0 to psychotic in less than a second, kicking and punching and swearing at her. Joan tried to keep her head, blocking some blows, letting others land where they didn't do much harm, until he made the biggest mistake of his entire life. He swung at her with the camera. Joan met the swing with a flat palm, knocking the weapon from his hand, sending it spinning through the air and cracking against the ground. Now they were evenly matched. Vlad, in a rage state, was oblivious to the loss of his weapon. He continued to punch and pummel, snarling like an animal, spittle spraying from his mouth. Joan saw the opening and lashed out her foot, hitting him solidly in the solar plexus. Vlad stumbled back, holding his gut. Joan got to her feet. She hurt all over, but she had been I'm sorry, I am not doing very good today. Joan got to her feet. She hurt all over, but she pushed the pain aside. She had beaten him once. She could beat him again. She widened her stance. Vlad attacked. Joan spun into a reverse kick and connected solidly with Vlad's jaw. He left his feet and smacked hard against the asphalt, landing on his back. Arms and legs splayed out. His head bounced on his neck. Joan wiped blood off her face, using her sleeve. Then she took a running start and punted Vlad right between the legs, trying to kick his testicles up into his skull. He howled, curling up into a ball. Joan knew she needed to kill him for what he did to her, to Marty. She had to end this here and now. But in her mind's eye, she saw Bill, his dead eyes wide open after she had shot him. It made her feel sick, empty. And that had been done to save Tom's life. She hated this man cowering before her, but he was defenseless. As much as he deserved to die, Joan couldn't find it in herself to do it. Not with her bare hands. Not like this. As she hesitated, Vlad managed to get to his feet. He limped out of the alley, heading for the street. She thought of all the people Vlad must have murdered, and all the ones he would eventually murder if she let him get away. She thought about spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when he was going to try to get her again. Joan made a decision. Maybe she couldn't kill him, but she could take him out of the game. Permanently. She took 3 steps and launched herself into the air, aiming her flying kick at Vlad's back. He fell, face forward, onto the sidewalk. She ran to him, knowing what she had to do, wondering if she had the courage, the stomach for it. Fate made it easier. Next to Vlad, in the gutter, was an empty beer bottle. She broke it against the pavement and grabbed Vlad's head by the hair, turning it to face her. 2 pokes, and Vlad's green eyes were gushing red. His screams were shrill, almost inhuman. Joan released him, and he scrambled to his feet, bleeding and howling, and permanently blind. His hands clamped to his eyes. He ran straight into traffic. Joan watched it happen as if it was in slow motion. Vlad staggering into the street, the sound of the horn, the screech of brakes. The bus hit him head-on. Vlad's arms reached out and grabbed the bumper as his legs went under the front tire. He wasn't dragged, exactly. It was more like he was erased. Pinned between the wheel and the street, Vlad's lower half was scraped away, leaving a wide streak of gore for almost 30 yards, like a big red skid mark. Joan limped out of the alley, holding her side. She followed the trail up to the bus. The driver had gotten out, staring at Vlad in utter disbelief. He just jumped out. It wasn't your fault. Joan placed a hand on his shoulder. He was trying to kill me. The driver looked at Joan, dazed.